So is nostalgia ruining modern gaming? This is a question that I have been asking myself a lot recently, and I think that it is a question that has a lot of layers to it. So we will be going over all of that in today's video. I will be talking about three separate game franchises in this video: the NBA 2K franchise, the Call of Duty franchise, as well as the Fortnite franchise. So make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're new here, as well as leave a like on the video, man. Both of those things really help me out. So let's just jump right into it. So, as you guys know, usually past games are looked at in a glorified fashion when it comes to these three specific franchises. And these three specific franchises are three of the biggest gaming franchises in the world. A lot of people look back at Fortnite in 2017 or 2018. A lot of people look back at Call of Duty Black Ops 2. A lot of people look back at NBA 2K17 and games like in that era. A lot of people also recently have been looking back very positively at these games in the COVID era, which was kind of the Call of Duty Warzone era. Fortnite was pretty decent during that time, as well as NBA 2K20. And I think a lot of this is rose tinted glasses kind of stuff going on. I think that there are three major reasons that people in today's day and age look back at these video games with so much nostalgia. I think number one is because they are comfortable with those specific games from the past, or the games like Fortnite being in the era that they were in, and they just never really took the time to learn newer iterations of the map, newer iterations of the game, so they're comfortable with the earlier versions. So then at that point, those are the ones that they say that they like the best. Also, I think something that goes into this as well is that a lot of people's lives were much simpler back in 2017, 2012, even 2020. A lot of people didn't have bills to pay. A lot of people, didn't really have to pay out of pocket for anything because they were still in high school, maybe they were still in middle school. Their life was just a lot more comfortable, and they could play video games at will without really having to worry about any real life responsibilities. And I think that a lot of people, when looking back, kind of get blinded by that. They were able to game a lot more back then. And that also kind of goes into the first argument, where they weren't really able to learn the newer iterations of these games as much as they were in the past. Now, with a game like Fortnite or even Call of Duty, the games were a lot more simple back then. Fortnite in 2017, 2018, way more simple than like Chapter 7 is today, and it takes a lot more time to learn. And a lot of people that don't have much time in their lives will kind of pick it up. There will be too much going on in each match, and they'll either turn it off or go to kind of play OG or reload. Now, something interesting with Fortnite as well that we have seen with the reload mode is the player base for reload was very large. Or not reload, excuse me, OG was I guess both OG and reload. The player base was very large at the start, and it continues to dwindle by the day. And I think that is because a lot of people just came back for a quick nostalgia rush, realized that maybe it wasn't as good as they remembered, and then decided to get off the game. Now, I was somebody with Fortnite that always kind of thought, like, yes, Chapter 1 was the best. But after OG released, I kind of realized that Chapter 5 is probably my favorite. There was just a lot more to Chapter 5. It was still really simple if you took the time to learn, especially Chapter 5 Season 1. And there's just a lot more to it. There's not really a whole lot to Chapter 1, which some people may like, sure, but I just think a lot of people, when Reload and OG did return, just played it and realized, okay, this isn't as good as I remember. So that is something that is an example towards my argument, where maybe it wasn't the best that it was. Maybe it's just looking back with rose-tinted glasses. Everybody's life was simpler back then. everybody just kind of looks back and says, yes, this was the best, but maybe it wasn't just the game. Maybe there were other aspects in your life that you liked better at that time as well. Maybe it was just easier. You know what I'm saying? So, anyway, and then there is also a lot of people, I think, as well, that have simply grown out of video games. I will never be somebody that this is the case. I think that I will love video games forever. As you can see here, I have gone back to play Call of Duty World War II because this is the Call of Duty that I prefer. Once they kind of moved in on to the engine with Warzone and Beyond, the movement didn't feel right to me. Just not really the biggest fan of the movement and kind of, I mean, that's my biggest complaint with the Warzone era and beyond with Call of Duty. It just doesn't feel as smooth. It's just there's too much going on with the HUD, especially in zombies and modes and other game modes like that. So I usually go back to play Call of Duty World War II, and Call of Duty World War II is a title that is very well hated on, but I think a lot of people, there was a major update in Call of Duty World War II. I think it was about like a year after release. Maybe I'm a little bit off with that, where they added so many different guns to the game. And before this update, I will admit, Call of Duty World War II did feel very, very dull. But I did come back to play this game for whatever reason after the update was out, and the game was just very, very fun with like the sniper that I'm using right now was added. I can't even remember what it's called off the top of my head right now. This is the silverfish variant of it. It's kind of a sniper with a silencer on it, which is very satisfying to use, in my humble opinion. The snipers, as well as the other classes in this game, were not very good when the game first came out. But like I said, they added all kinds of new stuff. And now, I think after that update, many people just never came back to play, right? So this is a game that gets universally hated on very, very heavily. And I think that that happens a lot in gaming. A lot of people speak on games that they simply have not played enough to have the room to speak on. They don't take the time to learn the game. They gave up on the game too early before patches or updates came out. I think that this happens so much. Do I think it's maybe a little bit of closed-mindedness going on? Yes, and I think a lot of it also comes from people that played video games so heavily, like in 2017 and the prior years that I've talked about before, just simply don't have the time to learn games like they did back in those days, man. So there's a lot of aspects to this. And I really do think that people these days are not giving newer video games a chance because they either don't have the time or just kind of have it cemented in their head that none of these franchises are ever going to be as good as they once were. Maybe in some cases that is true. I think that the zombies game mode in Call of Duty will never be as good as it was because I don't know what the developers are doing with zombies, but they are really kind of failing to give the player base as a whole what they want. I don't know why we need a complicated HUD. I don't know why we need all these quests. Give us the simple HUD with an arcadey feel and just let us high round. We need maps like that. That is the, what people want from zombies, in my opinion. I don't see why they can't do the heavy story-based maps with all kinds of Easter eggs and stuff, and then also do just some simple survival maps with no HUD. Because that was always the draw of Call of Duty Zombies to me. It kind of felt like something that you might go and play at the arcade, but maybe like the best arcade game that you've ever played type of thing, because it was just so simple in early maps such as Verrückt, Shinonuma, Kino der Toten. Maps like that are my favorites because you don't have to worry about doing all these quests. You can get your perks, you can upgrade your guns, and then you can just simply try to survive. But they have gone away from that in zombies for whatever reason. So with a game mode like Call of Duty Zombies, I do understand the complaints. But with Call of Duty multiplayer, as well as Fortnite, as well as even 2K, I think that if people did take the time to learn the newer games, like Fortnite Chapter 7 to me is absolutely unbelievable. Just like Chapter 5 was. Chapter 6 was really good at the start, and then kind of started to go downhill with some of the later seasons in Chapter 6, in my opinion. But I think the start of Chapter 6, now the start of Chapter 7, as well as the start of Chapter 5, were all amazing. And there are so many people that just don't take the time to learn them because they don't believe that Fortnite is ever going to be as good as it was. But now, like I've said, after I've played Chapter 1 through about 5 of Fortnite OG, not even nearly as much fun as I had at the start of Chapter 5, Season 1, excuse me. So, I do think that nostalgia is kind of, maybe it's not ruining gaming, because obviously there are still millions of people playing these games, but I think a lot of people have a very negative outlook on the newer iterations of these games. In some cases, yes, like zombies especially, it's not going to be as good as it was, but I would just like to see a more universally positive attitude toward it. Let's talk about the things that are good about these newer games instead of just complaining all the time that they should have never changed this, or this isn't nearly as good as it used to be, or, it's never going to be as good as it was in 2017. Just, I hear way more of those type of things rather than, oh, this newer aspect of the game is pretty fun, or, I like the changes that they made here. I just think that, negativity and pessimistic energy is very common in a lot of player bases of different games. And I think it stems from the things that I've already talked about. It also stems from burnout a little bit too. A lot of people have been playing these specific franchises for a decade or more now. And what I would recommend to those people is go and try something different. Of course, you guys know that I always primarily play my team, but sometimes I switch it up and go back to Call of Duty World War II for a little bit, or go back and play Fortnite for a little bit. I actually played Fortnite for a year plus when 2K24 came out because, obviously the My Team mode in 2K24, a lot of you guys that usually watch my channel know that it was horrible without the auction house. If you guys don't know, the auction house is something in My Team that is a very important part of the game that they decided to remove. They did bring it back in the next generation of 2K because of all the complaints. So sometimes there are things like that too. And if something is perceived extremely bad, or if there is enough outcry, I feel like these franchises do change things. There has to be a very big push to do so, but with that, 2K, my team specifically, in 2K24 saw their player base dwindle so much, and so many people on Twitter and other social media platforms saying that since this one aspect of the game is gone, the game sucks now. And they heard us. They brought it back the next year. Everybody was excited, and they didn't bring it back exactly the same as it was, but close enough to where it is still pretty much the same thing. So yeah, this is a very layered question, as I said at the beginning of this video. But as I already was trying to get to, I don't believe that nostalgia is necessarily ruining gaming, but I think that nostalgia is stopping a lot of people from giving newer games a chance, and is making a lot of people have a very just negative and pessimistic attitude going into newer games. Whereas it kind of used to be with newer games, everybody was positive, and I think that a lot of people are seeing other people that have lost hope in these specific franchises, and then that is kind of the attitude that they bring towards newer releases as well. So anyway, let me know what you guys think, man. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys believe that nostalgia is ruining gaming? Do you guys think that maybe gaming franchises actually are getting worse? And I'm not speaking facts? Just make sure you let me know in the comments section down below. And make sure to subscribe to the channel as well if you are new here. That is always very, very much appreciated, as well as leave a like on the video before you take off, man. But with all of that being said, I will see you guys in the next video.